Hey everyone, how's it going? Juan Dhas here, and welcome to this week's lesson video. And today I wanted to talk about superimposing pentatonics, or rather, to put it in really simple terms, just using different pentatonic scales over an existing chord type to get a little bit more color. I think this is a great next step after you've, done a lot of fundamental work of working with the pentatonic, learning it all over the neck, and is kind of a good way to start exploring different sounds on different chords. So for today's lesson, I'm just going to focus on two chord types. I'm just going to focus on major 7 chords and minor 7 chords. However, I would encourage you all to just look into it, experiment, really dive deep. One of the core things I really try and impress upon students, or just impress upon anyone who asks questions, is really dive deep into the stuff you already know. There's so much to be found in just basic chord types, or basics, what should be fundamentals, like the major scale, harmonic minor, and melodic minor, and the pentatonic scale. Just diving into those, you'll start to find different applications than just maybe what might be easy right off the bat, or familiar, let's say. So to get into it, why would we want to do this? I mean, the pentatonic scale is a tried and tested scale, if you would. Many people have built entire careers off of this one scale. So what it'll allow us to do? Well, basically the idea of superimposing a pentatonic, or taking a scale or a sound or chord or a function, this can be applied to many things, and I might do a further deep dive in other stuff in the following weeks. But with pentatonics, what it involves is taking a sound and then playing it on top of an existing chord type. So let's say I'm just playing like a D major voicing. We're going to do everything around D major and D minor. So I've got a D major voicing, and bear with me, I've just got my freeze for that. What many of us might do is play D major pentatonic, or for the guitar players, B minor pentatonic. Or if I play, right, relative minor, relative major. That's the immediate go-to thing that we would do. Now, let's look at this harmonically in an intervallic sense. When we play, when we have a D major chord or a D major 7, and we play B minor pentatonic, I'm just going to refer to everything as minor pentatonic for the sake of making this easy to follow. So what notes are we playing of the chord? I want to, again, encourage, get away from a shape. Really, shapes are great for visualization, but really try to understand what you're playing. So we have B, D, E, F sharp, A, and then we're back to B. So if you've got like a D major 7 chord, or just a basic voicing, you've got the 13, the root, the 9 of D, the major 3rd, and the 5th, right? Pretty straightforward. And that's a really clear statement, a very clear statement of harmony. You can do a lot with that, and just, there we go. Right? Root. even kind of like creating wider intervallic lines. Right? You can do a lot with just that one scale in and of itself, and that's the go-to option. Now take the concepts of creating lines and ideas, and this is a great compositional tool as well, creating melodies, and expand that to different chord types, and you start finding some interesting sounds. So for example, over the intro, I was shifting between 3 pentatonics, if you would. The first thing I was using was B minor pentatonic. Then you can play a minor pentatonic off the 3rd of a major 7 chord. So if we have D, F sharp, A, and C sharp as D major 7, take the F sharp and build a minor pentatonic starting on F sharp, which will give you F sharp minor pentatonic. Right? So now let's do the same intervallic deconstruction of that pentatonic. What intervals does this give us with relation to our context? So we have D major 7, right? We've got the root of the pentatonic would actually be the major 3rd of the key. So if we're in D major, we've got F sharp, right? 5th, 13, again, or B. C sharp, we've got the major 7. That's a new note. And then we've got the 9. So we have some available tensions on the chord. And what this will do is the way I think of it is if B minor or your relative minor is your core, is kind of home, building off the 3rd is moving a little away from home. You've still got enough common tones and still have enough chord tones to make it sound very grounded, but you get some of those upper extensions that add a little bit of color or a little bit of flavor, if you would. So let's say, okay, different voicing. Then, and what I would actually encourage is get like a loop or a chord and just hear how everything sounds against the chord. And when you're first practicing, be melodic with everything. Really take in how it all sounds. Right? Really beautiful sound. The last kind of pentatonic with the minor pentatonic that I would use is C sharp minor pentatonic in the case of D major. What is that? That's building a pentatonic off the major 7 of the chord. So if we have our D major voicing, what'll this give us? This will give us a Lydian. Got the major 7, 9, major 3rd, sharp 11, 13, and then we're back here. So that one you have to be a little bit more careful with, because if you use it on a very strong tonic chord, let's say if you have a 2-5-1, right? If you use it on the 1 chord and you place too much emphasis on it, it is a common sound. It's something that is used, but if you place too heavy an emphasis on it, you can pull away from the tonality. So you have to be very aware of your chord function. Although, that said, if it's more modal, if the context is more modal, it's just 1 chord, then kind of all bets are off, really. So that's major chords. Now, the same thing can actually be applied to minor chords, and you'll find your context becomes a little different, or rather the way everything relates to the chord is slightly different. You can't follow the same formula of build off of the 3rd and build off of the major 7, major 3rd and major 7, that is. There are slightly different rules you have to keep in mind. So let's get a context going. So D minor. The common practice would be, okay, right? Play D minor pentatonic. Cool sound, really well-known sound, but how can we make this a little different? So the first substitution we can use is or superimposition, if you want to look at it that way, is use E minor pentatonic. Whole step up from your minor 7 chord. So what tones will this give us? What chord tones or extensions will arise out of this? So we got a D minor 7 chord, D, F, A, and C, right? So we've got E, which is your 9, G, which is your 11th, A, which is your 5th, B, which is a natural 13, and then you have your root, D. So if we have our context going, what'll we get? It's D minor pentatonic. Now you see I can connect two pentatonics together, D minor pentatonic to E minor pentatonic. But if I stick to that sound exclusively, now, this one's a little more interesting. Why is this more interesting in the sense that it creates something unexpected? Well, in the context we get a Dorian sound, but E minor pentatonic doesn't have that minor third in there. It doesn't have an F in the chord voicing or in the scale. So when you play it against the chord, it has this kind of weightless quality to it. Sure, it has the root, and it has, it has the root, the 5th and the root in the chord, but it doesn't have that note that immediately says, oh, this is a minor chord, which is usually your 3rd. So this was a really cool sound if you want to embrace that. Heads up, this is also really great for dominant 7 sus4 chords. Gets you kind of that weightless quality, which I think sus4 chords have. Now, what you can do to kind of instill that sense of, oh, we're still in D minor, D Dorian, is move back and forth between D minor and E minor pentatonic. So if we have a D minor voicing, bear with me, I'm just using the freeze here. Oh, I got the right, there we go. Right, D minor. Just embrace D minor for a moment. So you can get those little flavors or remnants of that Dorian sound. So what are some other sounds you can use? You can also use A minor pentatonic, so building a minor pentatonic off of the 5th degree. So if we have D minor, A, which is your 5th, C, which is your minor 7, D, which is your root, E, which is your 9, and G, which is your 11. So, how does this sound? A little bit less weightless. There's enough common tones, but also enough. It doesn't feel so far away. I think really embracing that 13 starts pulling you away from like that core sound. So if you have a tonic minor chord, this is a great option to use. Sorry. Cool. So that leaves us with a couple of different options. Now here's an interesting one, and this is where I encourage you guys to explore. See what happens. This can yield some good results and some that are maybe questionable, depending on your ear. So what you can do is take a chord and then play a pentatonic off of pretty much every note in the chromatic scale. Some results will work, some results won't. So I'm going to take this D minor chord. I'm going to try something. This is like an example of what I would do to experiment with the sound. D minor. That's G minor pentatonic over a D minor 7. So what sound does that give us? It's interesting. You can tell it's kind of pulling on something. There's a little bit of tension because of that B flat, but it doesn't sound wrong or bad. So let's dive in and see why this works. Our context is D minor, D, F, A, and C. 1, minor 3, 5, minor 7, right? So we've got the 11, we've got B flat, okay? It's a flat 6. Minor 7, the root, and the minor 3rd. And then we're back to the 11. So what does this give us? We've got enough chord tones that we can link it back to the home key or home chord or whatever is the grounding principle in that moment. But that flat 6 gives us an Aeolian flavor. So let's say if I had a more Aeolian sounding voicing, and then try improvise melodically. Now let's say I mix some of that Aeolian flavor with this stuff. We get some really interesting sounds. So the idea behind this, or the idea behind what I'm putting forward, isn't necessarily this is a one-size-fits-all thing, because, you know, you're still missing out on some possible notes, but it's a great way to use something you already know and apply it in a context that's different. So what I want you guys to give a go at home, practice this for major 7 and minor 7, but also see what happens when you play a minor pentatonic off of different notes with respect to a dominant chord and a minor 7 flat 5 chord. Try see what happens when you play it off a minor major 7 chord. What happens when you play it off of a major 7 sharp 5 chord. I think you'll be surprised as to what you can figure out. And this is just a great way to use something that is so ingrained in the guitar vocabulary as an instrument, regardless of style. So, I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I'll see you in the next video.